So in this video, we'll be looking at aerobic and anaerobic respiration. So to start off, both of them involve the oxidation of organic molecules to produce ATP. ATP is adenosine triphosphate, and ADP is adenosine diphosphate. From the tri and the di, we can see that triphosphate means that there are 3 phosphate groups, as shown in this diagram here, and diphosphate, there are 2 phosphate groups. And the chemical energy within the ATP molecule is actually held in the chemical bonds between mainly the 2nd and the 3rd phosphate groups. So when the 3rd phosphate group is broken off, this is when the energy is released. So phosphorylation is the addition of a phosphate group, which involves the enzyme ATP synthase in a condensation reaction, while dephosphorylation is the removal of a phosphate group, which involves the enzyme ATPase in a hydrolysis reaction. So now comparing aerobic and anaerobic respiration. In aerobic respiration, the equation is that glucose and oxygen form carbon dioxide and water, and this is the balance symbol equation here. Whereas in anaerobic respiration, we have in humans glucose forming lactate, which is also known as lactic acid, and in yeast we have glucose forming carbon dioxide and ethanol. So the substrate or input of aerobic respiration can be glucose or lipids, whereas in anaerobic respiration, only glucose is an input. Aerobic respiration yields much more ATP than anaerobic respiration, yielding around 36 to 38 ATP per glucose molecule, whereas anaerobic respiration yields only 2, which is much less efficient. Aerobic respiration is involved in the following stages: glycolysis, the link reaction, the Krebs cycle, and the electron transport chain. It's worth noting that glycolysis is an anaerobic step technically, but it's still involved here. As for anaerobic respiration, it's involved in glycolysis and fermentation. Anaerobic respiration can be useful when a short but rapid burst of ATP production is needed, or in oxygen-deficient environments such as waterlogged soils where there is no oxygen available, or finally, when oxygen supplies in the respiring cells have been depleted and there is no more left available for respiration to happen aerobically. So looking at some practice multiple choice questions, I'll give some time to think about the question and then go over the answer. Okay, so the answer to the question is A. Pyruvate forms lactate in humans. So for example, question C, pyruvate forms lactate and carbon dioxide isn't right because in humans only lactate is produced and in yeast carbon dioxide is produced and ethanol, which is missing. And in D, ethanol is produced but not carbon dioxide and has ATP here, for example. Now for the next question, you can pause if you need more time. So the question says that this is anaerobic respiration in yeast cells. So that tells us that normally we'd be looking for ethanol and carbon dioxide as products. So then looking at these following answers, lactate would be in humans, which is not right. D is carbon dioxide and water, which is not right. And so we have the answer being C, ethanol and carbon dioxide. Now for the final question. So the answer to this question is C. So yeast is the main part of bread dough that allows it to rise and bake in the oven. And yeast, we know that anaerobic respiration in yeast produces carbon dioxide, which is why the answer is C. The ethanol evaporates during baking, and the carbon dioxide bubbles form air bubbles in the bread dough, which is what causes it to rise when it's baked.